Obese girl collapsed on mountain trail. Mountain man found her and whispered, "Mine now." "Run, girl," her mother hissed through tears. "Run before he comes for you." The echo of those words still rang in Adelaide Thornton's mind as she stumbled up the rocky Colorado Trail. Her wedding dress, once white, was torn and stained with mud, her boots blistered from miles of climbing. The sun scorched her face, and every breath burned in her chest. Behind her waited a life already sold. Cornelius Blackwood, the man her parents had promised her to, a widower twice her age, his hands thick with the smell of whiskey and cruelty. He had bought her freedom like cattle to pay her father's gambling debt. Tomorrow she would have been his wife. Tonight she was a fugitive. Addie had no map, no horse, no real chance of survival. But she had something stronger than hope. The raw will not to be owned. Still, the mountain was merciless. Her heavy frame ached with every step, her vision blurred, her stomach twisted in hunger. By the second night, she could barely move. The wind howled through the pines like laughter, mocking her weakness. She whispered to no one, "I'd rather die free than live chained." Then her knees gave out, and the world tilted into blackness. When she opened her eyes again, the earth trembled beneath approaching footsteps. A shadow loomed over her, tall, broad-shouldered, wild-haired, a man made of the mountain itself. He knelt beside her, his calloused hand brushing the dirt from her face, checking her pulse. "Still breathing," he muttered, his voice deep as thunder rolling through stone. Then, leaning close enough that she could almost feel the warmth of his breath, he whispered the words that would change everything. "Mine now. I'll take care of you." When Adelaide Thornton woke again, the first thing she saw was light, soft, golden, and warm. It flickered against the timber walls of a small cabin, where smoke curled gently from a stone hearth. She tried to sit up, but her body felt heavy, every muscle aching as if she had wrestled the mountain itself. "Easy," a deep voice said from the shadows. She turned toward it and saw him, the man from her dream, the one who had lifted her from the trail. He was sitting by the fire, sharpening a knife on a whetstone, his face half lit by flame. His hair was long and dark, his jaw rough with days of stubble, and his eyes, amber like trapped fire, watched her with calm patience. "You passed out on the ridge," he said. "Lucky I was patrolling that stretch." Addie swallowed, her throat dry. "Who are you?" "Tobias Blackthorn," he said. "People around here call me Toby." She studied him, uncertain. "Why did you help me?" He didn't look up from the blade. "Because you were dying. Didn't seem right to let the mountain finish you off." She tried to remember how she got there, the climb, the pain, the final collapse. Then, faintly, the memory of his voice came back to her. "You said something," she murmured, "when you found me." He paused, the knife still in his hand. "What did I say?" "Mine now." For the first time she saw him smile, small, sheepish, a flicker of warmth beneath the stoic exterior. "Didn't mean it how it sounds. Old habit, maybe. When I find something broken, a deer caught in a trap, a hawk with a clipped wing, I say it's mine until it can stand again." Addie blinked. "So I'm one of your rescues?" "Until you can walk out of here on your own 2 feet," he said. "After that, you decide where to go." His tone was simple, without pity. Still, something in it, steady, unyielding, stirred something deep inside her. Over the next few days, she saw what kind of man Tobias Blackthorn was. He rose before dawn, chopped wood, and disappeared into the forest with his rifle slung over his shoulder. He moved like someone who had always belonged to the wild. When he returned, his hands were full of fish or fresh meat, his clothes dusted with pine needles. Addie spent her days by the fire, regaining her strength. Her dress, torn and filthy, hung from a hook near the hearth. Toby had given her one of his shirts, the sleeves rolled and pinned to fit. She hated how she looked in it, hated the way the fabric clung to her softness. But when she caught Toby's glance, there was never judgment in it, only quiet respect. Once she asked him, "You live here alone?" "Been that way for years," he said, pouring her a cup of coffee. "Didn't much care for people after the war. Too much noise, too many lies." "War?" He nodded. "Served in the cavalry, saw too much death, learned that saving one life meant more than winning a dozen battles." He looked up then, his eyes meeting hers. "That's why I stopped leaving people to die on the trail." She couldn't answer. Something in his words, and in the calm certainty with which he spoke, felt like a hand wrapping gently around the broken pieces of her heart. That night, as the wind moaned outside and the fire cracked low, Addie whispered to herself, "Maybe I wasn't meant to die on that mountain." And somewhere behind her, Tobias's quiet voice replied, as if he'd heard every word, "No, you were meant to live." By the fourth day, Adelaide Thornton could finally stand without the world spinning. Tobias watched her test her balance beside the table, his arms crossed over his chest, the ghost of a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Stronger today," he said. "I can almost feel my legs again," she replied, trying to laugh, though her voice trembled. "Then you're ready to walk outside." He helped her to the door, his large hand steady against her back. When he opened it, the world rushed in. Sharp pine air, birdsong, the rush of a stream somewhere below. The mountains stretched endlessly, wild and untamed. Addie blinked in awe. "I thought the world ended on the other side of my father's house," she whispered. Tobias tilted his head. "Guess you were wrong." She smiled faintly. "I seem to be wrong about a lot of things." The days began to form a rhythm. Tobias showed her the mountain not as an enemy, but as a living thing, fierce yet generous. He taught her to gather wood, how to find water by following animal tracks, and which berries were safe to eat. At night, they ate by the fire, fish roasted on coals, venison stew simmering in the pot, bread he baked in an iron pan. "You learned to cook like this in the army?" she asked once, tasting the stew. He smirked. "Learned to eat whatever didn't kill me. The rest came after." Addie laughed softly, her first real laughter in years. The sound startled even her. "You should do that more often," Tobias said, glancing up. "You sound alive when you laugh." His words struck something deep, and she looked away, her cheeks burning. As summer deepened, Addie grew stronger. She learned to fish, to aim a rifle, to climb the ridge that overlooked the valley. Her body still carried its roundness, but she no longer hated it, not when it allowed her to work, to breathe the mountain air, to feel her own pulse steady beneath her skin. One evening, after a long hike, they reached a clearing where the world dropped away into a sea of clouds. The sunset set the sky aflame. Addie stood silent, wind in her hair, the hem of her skirt brushing the wildflowers. "This view," she said softly, "it feels like heaven forgot to close its doors." Tobias looked at her, really looked, and something shifted in his chest. She was still wearing his shirt beneath her patched dress, her cheeks flushed from the climb, her hair tangled from the wind. But she looked alive. Free. Addie, he said, voice low, you don't have to keep running. Nobody's going to find you here. I know, she said, but part of me is still scared. What if they come? What if— They won't, he interrupted. And if they do, they'll have to get through me first. She turned toward him. Why? You barely know me. He hesitated, then met her eyes. Because when I found you on that trail, I saw someone fighting to live. That kind of fight, it's worth protecting. The words hit her harder than she expected. She stepped closer, drawn to the steadiness in his gaze. You said mine now when you found me, she whispered. Do you still mean it? Tobias's breath caught. The wind stirred the pine branches above them, whispering through the silence. He reached out slowly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Not mine to own, he said. Mine to guard. Until you tell me I don't have to. Her heart pounded. She wanted to speak, but words failed her. Instead, she reached for his hand, rough, warm, sure, and held it against her heart. Neither of them moved for a long while. The sun dipped below the horizon, the world bathed in gold fading to blue. For the first time since she had fled her old life, Addie felt the weight of fear lift. The trail that had nearly killed her had led her here, to this man, this mountain, this fragile, impossible peace. And somewhere inside her, she began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was meant to be found. By August, the cabin had become more than shelter. It had become home. The rough-hewn logs glowed honey gold in the morning sun, and the scent of pine smoke and bread drifted through the clearing. Adelaide woke each day to the hiss of water boiling on the stove, and Tobias's steady footsteps outside, splitting wood or checking traps before dawn. At first, she had been content simply to watch him move through his world, confident, methodical, at peace, in a way she had never seen in anyone. Then one morning she rose early and met him by the stream, sleeves rolled, hair braided tight. You can't do all the work yourself, she said. If this is to be my refuge, I'll earn my place in it. He studied her for a beat, then handed her the axe. Careful where you swing. The mountain doesn't grow fingers back. Her first strike landed wrong, and the handle jarred her palms, but he didn't laugh. He stepped behind her, guiding her stance, his hands firm at her elbows. Use your weight, he murmured. You've got strength. Don't fight it. Let it work for you. The log split clean in two. Addie stared at it, stunned, and Tobias's voice softened. See? Nothing wrong with power if you know how to aim it. From that day forward, they shared the labor, hauling water, mending fences, tending the small vegetable patch Tobias had half forgotten. She learned to sew leather, to smoke meat, to find wild mint along the riverbank. In the evenings, he read aloud from a tattered book of poetry left by a trapper years before, his voice deep and quiet in the flickering firelight. Once, as he read lines about love's patience and mercy, she whispered, Do you believe in that? He poked at the fire, not meeting her eyes. I used to think mercy was weakness. Then I met you. The words hung between them, bright as sparks. Over time, Addie changed. The softness she had once hated became part of her strength, solid, enduring. Her face grew sun-touched, her hands roughened, her eyes clearer. The mountain had burned away her shame and left something truer behind. Sometimes Tobias caught himself watching her as she worked. The way she brushed hair from her face with the back of her wrist, the quiet hum under her breath when she kneaded dough. He'd never thought of beauty as something that lived in motion, but with her it did. One evening, as rain tapped the roof and the fire crackled low, Addie said, "I used to dream of ballrooms and silk gowns. Now I dream of this cabin, and you sitting right there." Tobias's lips curved. "Strange dream for a girl raised in finery." "Not strange," she said. "Real." Outside, thunder rolled over the peaks, and she flinched at the sound. He crossed the room, laid a hand on her shoulder, and she leaned into him without thought. The steady rise of his breathing, the heat of his body, it was safety itself. When she looked up, his face was inches from hers. "Tobias," she whispered. He hesitated, jaw tight. "Addie, I swore I wouldn't claim what isn't freely given." She met his eyes, unflinching. "Then I'm giving it." The kiss was slow, hesitant at first, then deepened like a storm breaking. When he pulled back, he pressed his forehead to hers and said, "The day I found you, I thought the mountain was testing me again. Turns out it was giving me something back." After that night, they moved through their days as two halves of one rhythm. They laughed more, worked easier, and though they said little about love, it was in everything. The meals shared, the silent touches, the way he reached for her hand without thinking when the sun went down. Autumn crept in quietly, painting the trees amber and gold. Addie stood on the porch one morning, shawl around her shoulders, watching mist rise from the valley. Tobias joined her, his arm sliding around her waist. "Cold's coming early," he said. "Then we'll stay close," she answered. And for a time the world was kind. Two souls the mountain had nearly broken, building warmth out of wilderness. But peace, like weather, never holds forever. The first snow fell early that year, drifting over the valley in soft, white silence. Tobias and Addie worked through the cold days side by side, stacking wood, curing meat, sealing the cabin tight against the coming winter. Life had settled into a rhythm of comfort and quiet, but the stillness of snow often hides what stirs beneath. One evening, while Addie was sewing by the fire, she noticed Tobias sitting at the table, a folded piece of paper clenched in his hand. His expression was distant, his jaw set tight. "What is it?" she asked. He hesitated before answering. "A letter, from the town marshal." She put the needle down slowly. "About what?" He unfolded it, the firelight catching the lines of neat handwriting. "There's a man looking for you, name of Cornelius Blackwood. Came through Denver 3 weeks ago asking questions, offering money for whoever brings you back." The warmth drained from her face. "He's still looking?" Tobias nodded. "And he's hired men to find you. Mercenaries, not lawmen." Addie gripped the edge of the chair, her hands trembling. "He'll never stop. He said once that if I ran, he'd make sure I belonged to him in this life or the next." Tobias rose, his shadow falling across her. "He'll have to climb a long way to get here." Her voice broke. "You can't fight him, Toby. He's rich, powerful. He'll bring others." "I don't care if he brings an army." His tone was low, steady, but she could hear the storm behind it. "He won't touch you." The next morning Tobias began setting traps and reinforcing the path leading to the cabin. Addie watched him from the window, her chest aching. Every hour he spent preparing for a fight was another reminder of the danger she had brought to his door. That night she told him the truth, all of it, about her father's debts, about Cornelius's cruelty, and the forced contract she'd fled from. "He bought me like livestock," she said, voice shaking. "He said I'd pay for my father's sins with my body." Tobias's eyes darkened, and he reached for her hand. "You were right to run," but I'm tired of running." She met his gaze, fierce through her tears. "I won't hide any more." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Then we don't hide. We end this." A week later the storm came, not of snow, but of men. Addie saw them first through the window, 4 riders, dark silhouettes against the white ridge. Tobias stepped out to meet them, rifle slung over his shoulder. Cornelius Blackwood dismounted, his expensive coat dusted with frost, arrogance still gleaming in his eyes. "You've kept what's mine long enough," he spat. "Step aside." "She's not yours," Tobias said, voice even. "She signed a contract," Cornelius sneered. "You think you can hide a stolen bride?" Addie pushed open the cabin door and stepped out, her shawl whipping in the wind. "I was never your bride," she said. "You forged my name, threatened my family, and bought their fear. But you'll never own me." Cornelius laughed coldly. "Do you really think anyone will believe the word of a runaway over mine?" Tobias raised his rifle slightly. "They'll believe the one still standing when this is done." The men tensed, hands on their guns, but Addie stepped between them. "No," she said firmly, "he's not worth your blood." She turned to Cornelius, her voice rising over the wind. "You think power comes from fear, but it dies in the light. I sent word to the marshal in Silver Creek. He knows everything, the forged papers, the threats, your crimes. If you take one more step, you'll hang before spring." Cornelius froze. "You're bluffing." From the trees behind, another rider appeared, a man in a long coat with a star pinned to his chest. "She's not," the marshal called. "Got your warrant right here, Blackwood." For the first time, Cornelius's composure cracked. His men shifted nervously. "This isn't over," he hissed, but the marshal was already dismounting. Tobias lowered his rifle. "Oh, it's over," he said. "You just don't know it yet." When the riders finally left, the valley fell silent again, except for the wind sighing through the pines, carrying away the last echo of fear. Addie turned to Tobias, tears streaming freely now. "It's done," she whispered. He nodded, stepping closer. "No, it's begun." The marshal's men escorted Cornelius and his hired guns down the ridge, but Tobias knew better than to believe the danger was gone. Men like Cornelius Blackwood didn't surrender. They schemed. That night, as the sky darkened to iron, he stood outside the cabin with his rifle resting against his shoulder, eyes scanning the tree line. Addie came to the door, a lantern in her hand. "You've been standing there for hours." He turned toward her, the firelight painting her face in gold. "Won't rest till I know he's gone for good." She walked to him, snow crunching under her boots, and laid a hand on his arm. "You can't protect me from everything, Toby." He looked down at her, eyes softening. "Maybe not, but I'll die trying." The word sent a shiver through her, part fear, part something deeper. She took his hand, squeezed it tight. "If he comes back, we face him together." Tobias hesitated, then nodded. "Together." Just before dawn, the storm broke. The first gunshot shattered the silence, echoing through the valley. Tobias lunged for his rifle. Outside, dark shapes moved through the snow. 3 of Cornelius's men come back for vengeance. He fired once, the shot ringing out clean and sharp. One man dropped, the others dove for cover. Addie ducked behind the porch post, clutching the lantern. "Toby," she cried. "I'm fine," he shouted, returning fire. A bullet splintered the wood near his head. Then Cornelius's voice cut through the chaos, cold and gleeful. "You should have let me take her, Blackthorn. You'll die for her instead." Tobias fired again, the muzzle flash lighting his face in the snowstorm's dark. Then I'll die knowing I did something decent. Another shot, closer this time. Cornelius appeared through the swirl of snow, pistol raised. But before he could fire, Addie grabbed the lantern from the porch and hurled it. The glass shattered against his coat, flames leaping up his sleeve. Cornelius screamed, stumbling backward into the snow. Tobias seized the moment, tackled him hard, the two men crashing to the ground. They struggled, fists and fury, until Tobias pinned him. The pistol lay between them. Cornelius spat blood. "You think she'll stay with a beast like you? She's made for parlors, not dirt." Tobias's voice was steady. "She's made for freedom." He stood, pressing the barrel of the gun into the snow beside Cornelius's head. "Run, and if you ever come back, the mountain will bury you." Cornelius staggered to his feet, burned, beaten, and finally broken. Without another word, he fled into the trees, his men limping after him. When silence returned, Addie ran to Tobias, snow soaking her skirts. She touched his cheek, streaked with blood and soot. "You could have killed him." He caught her hand, kissed her palm. "I didn't need to. The mountain already took his pride." She smiled through her tears, resting her forehead against his. "And it gave me you." The storm died with the sunrise, the first light spilling across the valley like mercy. For the first time since that cursed wedding night, Adelaide Thornton was free. And Tobias Blackthorne, the man who once whispered mine now, finally understood what he had really meant. Not possession, but devotion. When spring came, the mountains thawed into rivers of light. Snow melted from the pines, flowers crept through the soil, and the valley, once marked by gunfire, was alive again with bird-song. Adelaide stood on the porch of the cabin, watching sunlight spill across the ridges. For the first time, the world didn't feel like something she had to run from. Behind her, Tobias stacked firewood, his shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows, his hands steady and sure. When he caught her watching, he grinned that quiet, crooked grin that still made her breath catch. "You planning to keep staring, or give a man a hand?" he teased. She laughed, the sound bright and easy. "I think I've done my share of chopping wood for one lifetime." He wiped his brow and crossed to her, resting his arm gently around her shoulders. "You've done more than your share of surviving." She leaned into him, her voice soft. "When you found me on that trail, I thought you said, 'Mine now,' because you meant to keep me. But I see it differently now." "How's that?" he asked. "You meant I belonged here, to this life, to freedom, to myself." Tobias nodded slowly. "And to me, if you still want that." She turned toward him, sunlight in her hair, and smiled. "I do." He reached into his pocket and drew out a small ring, carved from the same pine that built their home. "Then I guess it's time to stop rescuing and start living." Addie took his hand, tears gathering in her eyes. "You already saved me, Toby. Now you just get to keep me company." They stood together in the quiet of the mountain morning, the wind whispering through the trees like a benediction. And somewhere between the wild peaks and the open sky, two hearts, once lost and hunted, had finally found their forever home. Every time I tell a story like this, I'm reminded that love doesn't always come wrapped in perfection or wealth. Sometimes it's found halfway up a mountain, in the arms of someone who simply refuses to let you give up. Tobias and Addie's story isn't about beauty or luck. It's about courage, kindness, and choosing each other when the world turns cruel. Wherever you're listening from, the city, the desert, or a quiet corner of the world. Remember, someone out there is meant to find you too. Now tell me, where are you listening from tonight?